Welcome in, welcome in. Thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to our second Leaders Like Me. Good afternoon, good afternoon. Thank you all so much for joining in. I'm so excited to see you all. I am now going to hand it over to our student MC for the afternoon, Mr. Calvin Harris. Mr. Calvin Harris is a senior from Ron Brown High School. He is here in Washington, D.C. Last summer, Calvin actually interned at the World Bank. So he is not new to Urban Alliance. And now he came back for his senior year as a part of the high school internship program and is now an intern at the Legal Aid Society, okay? So you all are in great hands. Mr. Calvin, it is now to you. Take it away.
Hey, hello, everyone. I'm Calvin. I'm so excited to be interviewing Ms. Kesha Cash today. Ms. Cash is the founder and general partner of Impact America Fund, a venture capital firm that invests in companies built for and by people in marginalized communities. She was recently named one of the Fast Company's 100 most creative people in business. Ms. Cash has nearly a decade of experience in impact investing, including Agilia Ventures, a $5 million fund that she co-founded. Ms. Cash holds an MBA from Columbia University and a BA in Applied Mathematics from UC Berkeley. So, welcome and thank you for being here today. First, to begin with, can you give us a quick summary of your career journey and tell us more about what you do at Impacts America Fund?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the intro, and it's great to be here. I was looking forward to, I speak a lot, and I was really looking forward to this conversation with all of you, because I do think it's important and critical that young people have a greater understanding of what's possible, and particularly in my space, my journey from finance and Wall Street, and how I landed at Impact America Fund. So, you know, what I do on a day-to-day basis, I'm a venture capitalist, and I'm a venture capitalist that chooses to invest in companies that are technology-enabled companies that drive social and economic change in communities that I care about and that I think we all care about. And I can go into more detail about what that means, but it was a long, windy road to get to this point, and I'm really excited to share with you all today.
Thank you. For those of us unfamiliar with venture capital, can you give us a brief venture capital 101 overview?
Sure. So the 101 of venture capital, I manage my own fund. There are venture capitalists that work at other organizations. So in addition to being a venture capitalist, I also manage my own fund. And what that means from an investing standpoint as a venture capitalist that manages my own fund, and I have a 6 employees, my work is to go out and raise money and capital from investors, people that have much more money than I have. So these are wealthy families, these are foundations, these are large financial institutions, and they are committing capital to me to then invest on their behalf. So they agree with me. They say, hey, we like your thesis, we like your perspective. We believe that you can go out there and find us good opportunities and entrepreneurs, and we're willing to commit capital to you. We're willing to sign an agreement. It's not free money. They don't give me the money. I have to give that money back plus a return on that money, but they commit capital to me. And that commitment is a long-term commitment. It's a 10-year commitment for each fund. And within those 10 years, what I'm promising back is my best effort to return their capital at some point along those 10 years, as well as a return. And I have the freedom, my team and I have the freedom to invest that money, to invest that capital into promising entrepreneurs that we think can build big companies. At the end of the day, how we make our money is that these founders, these companies that we invest in, they grow, and then they ultimately either sell their company to a larger company or go public, or think of other ways that they can distribute cash back to me so that I can return that capital back to my investors. And then there's some economic sharing that happens. If I do really, really well as a fund manager, then I'll make more money because I get to share in those profits. But my first priority is returning the capital back, essentially, that these investors committed to me, loaned to me to some degree, but I'm responsible for returning that money back. Now, the cool thing about venture capital, at least in equity investing, is that if, hey, this whole thing blows up, and I'm not trying to blow it up in sort of a bad way, then, say none of our companies succeed and they all fail, we all tried our best, and everyone's signing up for that. So the people that invest in venture capital, they're doing so knowing that it's a really high risk type of bet. But if you can make money and grow a large company, you can imagine that the first group of people or set of people that invested in Facebook back in the day when Mark Zuckerberg started Facebook, or Amazon, those are, huge multi-billion-dollar companies now. And along that path, those investors, were rewarded for that early investment.
That sounds like a lot of important and interesting work. A recent statistic said that just 30% of U.S. businesses are owned by people of color. Yet recent census data shows that the U.S. is rapidly growing more diverse. What barriers have you faced as a Black female entrepreneur, and how you overcome them?
Yeah, there's a lot of that's an important question, and really important statistics. And I have many stories. I think starting out, I started my career through the SEO program, Sponsors for Educational Opportunity, that placed high talented Black and brown college students on Wall Street. And that was and continues to be a very important program because otherwise, I didn't grow up understanding finance. I didn't have people in my family that were business leaders, so to speak. And so I had this great opportunity to intern on Wall Street as a college student. And then I was able to return after college full time. And so that door was open for me. But the path wasn't easy, right? So being one of the only, I think at the time, Black female that worked on my floor in investment banking, and not having, kind of people that looked like me there to guide me, that was challenging. But despite that, and I think, I know everyone here understands that, that's why you're here. Despite that, you keep pushing forward. And so when I had the opportunity after working as an investment banking analyst on Wall Street, I made a very conscious decision to start to build my own company because I wasn't as excited about working in organizations that honestly just weren't created for me, but I knew it was important for me to have that skill set. So I wore this shirt for you all today, the freedom of making and charting your own path is something that is very near and dear and important to me. Now that being said, I'm able to do this work and operate my own firm because of the experiences that I had, working on Wall Street, because of the challenges that I had to overcome, learning how to navigate through those challenges, obviously makes you much stronger. But they're still here. Unfortunately, I wish they weren't, and I wish, we were living in an equal society. But I think we all know that we're not. And so it's important to be clear-headed about where you're headed, and support each other along the way to get there. I'm here because of a lot of support that a lot of people provided me along the journey, and that's really the way that we survive these challenges.
Very interesting. Many of us are interested in starting our own business one day. What qualities do you look for when deciding to invest in a new and growing business?
Yeah, so it's the type of businesses that Impact America Fund invest in, and typically are invested in by venture capitalists or companies that we think can grow really, really fast, right? So my firm, because of our thesis, we probably never invest in an app like TikTok, but if you think about TikTok and how fast TikTok has grown, like that's a venture capitalist's dream, is to get money into that company at an idea phase, and to have it turn into worth billions and billions of dollars. I think the TikTok is now worth $50 billion, and it was founded 2016. So that's the dream. I think for Impact America Fund, as I mentioned, we're investing in companies we think can grow really, really fast, but we also want those companies to create economic opportunity and power for underserved communities. So if you think about, and if you look at all the stats, low-income people pay more to live their lives. I grew up low income, and I know that's true, from your banking fees to your housing costs, all the things that you need for basic living cost more when you're low income, and low income people typically have the least amount of time. And so you're taxed on every level. So for Impact America Fund, we're looking at companies and opportunities driven by technology. So technology is really important for us in order for these companies to grow really fast. How do we reinvent and think about a different banking system, right? Why, we all have mobile phones now. And so mobile banking is very accessible. How do we do it in a way that we make sure it's inclusive of low income people and the needs of low and moderate income people? So we look for companies that both are going to grow really quickly, but not at all costs. Like, we really want these companies to have a positive impact on the communities that we care about. When we invest in founders, we're looking for people that are passionate. Starting a company isn't easy. If you all have entrepreneurs in your family, you know that it's hard work. They're working 24 hours a day. They're thinking about their business idea. They're figuring out how to build their business. So one big criteria for us to invest in a founder or a company at an early stage is that they're passionate. They're beyond passionate about this idea. And then they also obviously need to have the experience. So if you're coming to me and you're saying, using the banking example, is like, I want to create my own mobile bank. Well, I need to look at your resume and your background and your history to say that you actually have the experience. Where have you worked? Have you worked in the banking industry? Who's on your team that understands technology? How do you target who's on your team that understands marketing to target the customer base? So we're really looking for, when we invest in companies at the early stage, we're looking to invest in people that are extremely passionate, but also extremely knowledgeable about the target market and the product or service that they're deploying.
Thank you. For most of us, Urban Lines is our first professional internship. What was your first job or internship, and what was the most important thing you learned from that experience?
Yeah, I was thinking about my first. I've had jobs since I was 12 years old. So my job when I was 12 years old, I delivered newspapers, and I had a scooter. Like, I didn't have a bike. I couldn't drive. So I used a scooter to deliver the Sunday paper to my local community. And I made money from that. And then thankfully I had jobs as a youth through programs. I grew up in Orange County, California. I had jobs, youth jobs. I worked at different organizations in the summer, which was tremendous. I learned a lot. I made money. And then the job, honestly, that I think I learned the most from, and I've told you, I've worked on Wall Street, and I have my fancy degrees, but where I learned the most in terms of what I think I apply daily now as a venture capitalist was the job I had as a waitress in high school. And so working in food service and customer service and being a waitress, juggling, someone's check that they need, someone's order that wants to be taken, seating a customer in between that actually taught me not only customer service skills, but it taught me how to manage a million balls at once. And if you're founding a company, if you're starting a company, and really honestly through life, learning how or knowing how to juggle multiple balls and keep them for the most part in the air is really important. So my waitress job, to be honest, I feel like I use that skill set more often than not. Then obviously, as a venture capitalist and I'm investing other people's money and I'm trying to make a return on that money. My background as a merger and acquisitions analyst on Wall Street, obviously very important. And that internship was pivotal, in my life to have that experience and then work there full time. But I'd say, giving you kind of a taste and flavor of where I've quote unquote interned and where I've worked, what I've tried to practice in any situation is to show up as a student and to learn regardless of what the environment is, to really learn what the lessons are for me in that space.
Thank you. That was really great advice. What is the best piece of advice that you've received in your career?
Oh gosh. There's been a lot of advice in my career. I think, it's when I started on Wall Street, when I worked as an M&A analyst back in the day, they used to have this, SEO have this, and they probably still have this saying, sort of first in, last out. They're basically like, look, you all are new here. You are the first one at your desk and you're the last one to leave because you're here, you're learning the game, you're working hard. And so that has stuck with me. It's if you are attempting to do something and climb a ladder and to learn something, be the first there, right? And be the last to leave because you're hungry for that information. You're hungry for that experience. And so, I've tried to live by that principle, as well as early on in your career. I don't advise this because I think you need to get in where you fit in and learn. But at some point, really go for what you're passionate about. Go for what, that thing that keeps you up at night. If you can figure out a way to make money doing it, go for it. Now, don't do it too soon. And I probably jumped out there too soon because you got to be financially stable and you have to have the resources to do it. So don't jump out there and be broke trying to pursue your passion. But if you can pursue your passion and find a way to make money or get others, I mean, being an entrepreneur is about rallying other people around you to support that dream. So if you can influence people and build a team of people and get people on the same page with your vision, go for it. So, I know folks that stayed in investment banking probably much longer than they would have liked to. Now, the flip side of that, they have more money than I do. So they're living their best lives, but they're also now trying to find, that passion point. So it's different paths for different folks, but don't be afraid if you feel like you have a great idea to step outside of the box and to do what your heart's calling you to do.
Now, that's really also some great advice. Tell us about a tough moment in your career and how you got through it and what you learned from it.
Oh, there have been a lot of tough moments. Let's see. Geez, I think, honestly, like my path has been quite different than most of my peers. And so after working on Wall Street, I made a really conscious decision to, downsize. Thankfully, I had the income and the savings to do that, but I downsized and decided that I wasn't going to work, at a large institution, and that I would start to work with really small businesses in Los Angeles. And that was before, I had money to start a fund, or before I had investors, before this idea of Impact America Fund existed. And that was a tough decision because I was moving in a different direction than most others were at that point in their career. And I was also, I think I was quite hard-headed. So I had the vision of what I saw and wanted to work in community with small businesses, and I didn't quite have all the knowledge that I needed. And so I was trying to get something done sort of by myself or independently without really knowing the full scope of what it was or what it entailed. But I learned a lot from that experience. I learned how important having teams of people around you are, how important it is to listen to advice, to seek out help. And then I made a decision. I was out there for a while, flip-flopping around Los Angeles, as I'd like to say, had a lot of fun, but made a decision at that point that I decided to go back to school, to go back to get my MBA at Columbia, because I recognized that I was missing some of the pieces of the pie in order for me to be successful at what I was attempting to do. And so that was tough, right? It was almost like, beating my head up against the wall and realizing that what I said I wasn't going to ever do. I was like, I'm not going back to school. I'm not going to work at an organization again. I was like rebellious against the system. At some point, I had to look at myself and said, okay, this isn't working. So what are you going to do differently? Because clearly, if I knew what I was doing, I'd be further along doing it. And so having the self-awareness and the consciousness to change paths and to change course was really important. And now I'm not afraid to fail. Like, things don't always work out, but it doesn't mean that you don't try them. And I try not to operate with a lot of fear. Sometimes I can get you in trouble. I take a lot of risk, probably more risk than most people would take. But if you can get past all of that, there's a lot of reward on the other side.
Thank you. This month, UA students are learning about setting goals and planning for our futures. When you were finishing high school, what were your goals and how has you approach to your goal setting changed over time?
Yeah, I've gotten much better with goal setting. So you all should applaud yourselves if you're learning how to goal set. Urban Alliance is teaching you how to goal set now. Take full advantage of that. Setting goals is key. My team and I, we set goals on a monthly basis. We've tried it quarterly, but things are moving so rapidly and so fast in our space that we're setting them on a monthly basis, and we're holding ourselves accountable to those goals. I think, in order for you to get to point A to Z, sure, you can kind of fly by the seat of your pants and trust, the universe to get you there, which I've tried many times before, and sometimes it works out. But it's nice to have a plan. It's nice to set goals, and it's nice to be able to look back at what you said you were going to do to see if you actually achieved it. And if you didn't, then asking yourselves, why not, right? Some things, maybe the goal was too lofty, or you didn't have enough information about the goal, or, I overcommit. I pile more things on my plate all the time than I can possibly get to. And so one thing that I'm trying to do in order to achieve my goals is to make sure I have space and time for that. So goal setting is so important in order to get from A to Z, and to do so in like a methodical way, in a way that you can actually look at what you wrote down or what you committed to, and hold yourself accountable for that. And I'll add the question out of high school. Out of high school, I couldn't tell you that. So if you all are on that page right now, that's a good place to be. I left a lot of things up to chance, and with vision and with persistence in terms of where I was headed, but I was not as methodical about setting goals and holding myself accountable to those goals. The flip side, I would say too, don't be so rigorous about your goal setting that if something does magically appear that wasn't a part of the plan and it's something that's actually good for you, you're also flexible enough to incorporate that. So there's, what I found is a balance of setting goals, but also being open and aware to opportunities that may arise that weren't a part of your initial plan.
Thank you. What is a common mistake that you've seen first-time entrepreneurs make, and how can it be avoided?
Yeah, I go back to, I think I consider myself an entrepreneur. I go back to the point of, as an entrepreneurs, you kind of have to be in order to think you're actually going to go out there and build this big company and, make all this money one day, make all this impact one day. Like, those are pretty bold moves. So most entrepreneurs I know, including myself, are quite stubborn. And you have the vision. Most entrepreneurs that I know that are great entrepreneurs, they are visionaries. They can see it play out before it actually plays out. And so when you're carrying this vision and you can see it working and you're confident it can work and you believe in it and you're making it work every day, sometimes it's hard to hear other people. Sometimes it's hard to take advice. And the entrepreneurs that we have, we're invested in 15 companies now across our funds. The entrepreneurs that are growing the fastest have advisors around them. They seek out support. They ask great questions. The entrepreneurs that are slower to growth, they're trying to figure everything out by themselves. And that's not really what entrepreneurship is about. I think there's kind of this false perception based on what you see in media that there's this one, bold, charismatic CEO that's at the top of the company, and that person is making everything happen. And that's false. That's not true. It really requires a team of people, and it requires that CEO, if they're a really good CEO, to pull, thoughts and pieces of wisdom from folks that are around them, people that are invested in them, advisors. As a good entrepreneur is always looking for information. They're always trying to find the nugget. If I have a conversation, Calvin and I are having this conversation now, and the conversation I'm having with you all, after this conversation, I'm going to reflect on the conversation to hear what I said and to hear what you said. And an entrepreneur is constantly reflecting and trying to find the wisdom or the tool or the piece of information so that that either validates what they're thinking or helps them change course. So it's I think entrepreneurs make the mistake, young entrepreneurs, first-time entrepreneurs make the mistake that this is their business, this is their company, they're going to get it done all by themselves. And they're honestly, what we've seen, are the slowest to grow.
I completely agree with you. Last question before we get into our fun lightning round. What skill has been the most useful in your career and why?
Yeah, I think, again, I go back to my time as a waitress, customer service, right? It's how do you make people feel? And that runs throughout my business. I have investors. I have 67 investors that have trusted me with their capital, with their money. And part of it is, yes, we believe we are good investors, and we're going to invest that money in a way that will return their capital and create impact. But it's also the relationships I have with those investors. I have really deep, connected relationships. If they email me, I'm responding. They are my clients. So I'm in business. They pay me to essentially manage their capital. So I'm in business for them, and I make sure that I and the rest of my colleagues at the firm have really great customer service. And that's too with founders. If we're entrepreneurs, there are entrepreneurs that want to raise money. There are a lot of investors now, thankfully, that can invest in their companies, especially if they're great companies. So the founders and the entrepreneurs now are in a position to choose who they want as investors, who do they want as partners in their companies. And so when we meet founders and entrepreneurs, that customer service is also important for them. Are we going to be good partners? I'm on text message with most of my founders. Like, our relationship goes beyond the business transaction. One of our founders, who's just phenomenal and growing a really big business quickly, his 101-year-old grandfather just passed away. And so we had a conversation today about that. And that's part of the work as well. And that goes beyond, just, hey, I'm going to serve my customer. It's really about how do you build deep relationships with the people, that you choose to work with. So I'd go back to that waitressing job in high school and say, learning the art of customer service and understanding what people need and when they need it is a skill that has been invaluable to me.
Thank you. We're now going into our lightning round of fun questions. Before we open up for Q&A, remember to type your questions in the chat box and we will call on you and ask your question. Okay, lightning round, 60 seconds. Here we go. Favorite movie of all time, one thing you can't live without, favorite place in the world, one food you could eat forever.
Calvin, let's do one question at a time and let Miss Cash respond. Yep.
No, I was tracking with you, Calvin. I was going to listen to all of them, and then I was coming back.
that would be the test, Miss Cash. Go ahead, Calvin.
Sorry. Favorite movie of all time.
Favorite movie of all time. I'm sorry, it's still The Color Purple.
Okay. One thing you can't live without.
Gosh, my walks in the sun. I cannot live without it. Have to do it most every day.
Okay. Favorite place in the world?
California, Southern California, actually. I've been to many places in the world, and I'm convinced Southern California is the best place in the world.
One food you could eat forever.
Gosh. I like sushi, but I don't think I can eat it forever. I think I could eat collard greens forever.
Last TV series you binged?
I was thinking about that before, and I have during the pandemic. Probably like most of us have watched more Netflix and Hulu than I could probably stomach. But the last one that I binged and really loved, I think it was Lovecraft Country.
Best book you ever read?
Oh, goodness. There's this really, really small book. If you get a chance to read it one day, it's called The Wisdom of Finance. And it's an interesting book because it talks more about the philosophy of money, which is fascinating to me. I want to know everything I can know about money. So The Wisdom of Finance.
Words you live by?
Oof. Yeah, I think, I don't have a concise answer for that, but, follow your heart, follow your passion. And then I'd add to that, as I said, do so smartly. But don't be afraid to jump out there and go for what you believe in.
Who is your personal hero?
My mother.
How do you start your day?
I actually start my day. I'm trying to get better about it because I do pick up my phone right away, and that's not good. That's not healthy. But I start most days with a long walk.
One app you can't live without.
Most recently, my Fidelity app, because I'm checking my stock portfolio seeing if the market is going to turn itself upside down. So far, we're still in good shape, but I'm constantly looking at my stock portfolio through my Fidelity app.
Okay. We're going to open up to Q&A. First up is Asiya. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. From Chicago. So
that's me right here. You say Osai Omerigate.
Oh, okay. Osaya. Thank you.
Okay, so my question is, what makes you want to keep going? Like, what keeps you going? What keeps you rolling even now?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think even now, I think for me, I've finally reached this point where I do feel like I'm in a stable place with my business. It took a long time for me to build my business, maybe longer than it should have, because like I said, I was stubborn back in the day, and then the light bulb went off and I was like, oh, okay, actually, I need people to help me do this. And so now I'm at a point where I have a team of 6 people. They're all brilliant folks that care just as much as I care about the work of creating opportunities for underserved people through the investments that we make. And that's exciting. And I think last year was the tipping point where I've been out here. If anyone, for folks that know me, I've been out here for a long time preaching this message of, how do we build better businesses for our community? And, last year being a tipping point where, we all know that something has to happen differently in America in order for there to be true participation for large numbers of people in the economy. And so that's exciting to me. Like now people are woke, there's more awareness. And I feel like what we call it in investing, there's a tailwind, there's a wind blowing against our backs, that if a tailwind is on a plane, right, that plane moves faster. So I feel like we're here, it's the right timing for the work. And there's this tailwind, there's this energy that I don't have to do all the work, but it's pushing us forward.
I see. Okay, I love that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for your question.
Thank you. Next up, we have Jewell Joiner from DC.
Hi, I'm Kesh. My question for you is, if you could have done something differently, what would it be and why?
Yeah, sometimes I think about that. There are things that I'm like, I wish I could have did it, but then if I did that, would I be here? I think honestly, I probably would have attended business school sooner than I did. I waited a little longer. Now, that being said, when I went back, I was very focused because I said, look, I'm an older student. I have bills to pay. I'm not here to play around. I have to get in and get what I came for. But I can see a scenario where I could have done it sooner. And so, yeah, I think it's, it's a give and take. Like I try my best not to live with regrets and to do what I'm supposed to do. And if it doesn't work out, you get back up the next day and you try something different.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Thank you. Now we have Rory Kane from Baltimore.
Hi.
Hi.
My question for you is, do you think providing financial education to lower income communities, like increasing financial literacy, will change the way businesses operate and the amount of entrepreneurs and what they're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great question and an important question. I actually serve on a committee that advises the SEC Small Business Innovation Group. And their job is to think about how do you change the rules or tweak the rules or introduce new rules to make sure low and moderate income people actually have access to play the game and understand what that means. So part of the conversation now, and it's public, is that there's work to say, if I'm a gig worker, if I'm driving for Uber or Lyft or doing any other kind of gig job, I'm not a full-time employee, but I'm actually helping to build this business. Should those 1099 workers, those gig workers, should they actually be able to have ownership in the company? Right now, the way that the rules set up, you can't easily give equity ownership to a 1099 worker. And so we're talking about the why, if this is the new kind of way that people work. There are a lot of people now that choose to gig. They're building their small businesses on a platform and they're considered gig workers, but they're also building the platform how do we make sure that they're fairly compensated for what they're doing? And so thinking about the rules, and part of the conversation to your question that we had is, yes, if we can change the rules so that 1099 workers can earn equity, and you have to think about the how there because it gets complicated. We need to make sure, because there are case studies done in the past that were horrible. They were taken advantage of. They didn't understand what they actually owned. They didn't have agency to say what they wanted to do with their money, et cetera. So if we're going to make these new rules, we also have to think about financial literacy and financial education. So we are huge on that because you can change the system and change the rules, but if people don't have the information and understand how the game works, we're still in the same situation.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay. Our last intern is Sarah Mosey from Chicago.
Thank you so much for letting me say my question. And I just want to tell you, thank you so much for being here. It's really inspirational what you do for the community. My question is there any advice you can give us on building up our networks as young adults in a time where socializing and building relationships with others is harder?
Oh, that's a great question. I need your advice on that one, Sarah, because part of as a venture capitalist specifically, it is about relationships. It's about networking. Before the pandemic, I was zigzagging from California to New York, from to Chicago, to all the places that you all are in, meeting people and attending conferences and building my network. And so that's really, really important. I think what I've learned over time is where I'm at now, and I can say this now, is looking at the network that I have. And so for a certain period of time, I was focused on building a big network, which is coming in handy. But now I'm focusing on, okay, who are the people in the network that are really aligned with my mission, my values, and my work? And how do I deepen the level of engagement with them? How do I, remember to call them on their birthdays? How do I make sure I remember their kids' names, which I'm horrible at, even the people closest to me? I think we're at a point in time where deeper connections matter more than a lot of connections. And so thinking about ways that authentically, right, for you, you're not manipulating people, but authentic ways for you to deepen engagement with a select group of people that are also, on the same path, they're influencers in their community, that can go a long ways. And I think people are getting more and more comfortable, we have to, right, with Zoom and technology and using, obviously, your LinkedIn, et cetera. So using the tools that are available, but I'd say, think deep versus wide, and how do you create deep relationships versus a lot of relationships, if that's helpful.
Yeah, that was really helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our last question: what is one thing you want UA students to remember from today's conversation?
What do I want you to remember from today's conversation? Yeah, I want to tell you all, I know I'm a personal friend of Ishana, who leads this organization. I've known her for many, many, many years, and I know the great work of this organization. And so, you're in good hands. I applaud all of you for being a participant in Urban Alliance. And know that these are opportunities that will propel you forward. Don't take any of it lightly. Make sure that you're showing up and doing your very best. And the way that I look at, I participated in a number of programs to get me to this point. Like, these are programs that should exist because the access isn't fair. It just isn't. And so take full advantage of programs like Urban Alliance and other programs to get yourself in the door. And then obviously, as I know all of you are doing, you work really hard to show up. But while you're working hard and you're showing up, the thing I'd say to remember is that you're brilliant. You come from brilliant communities. I think one thing that I can admit to is that I got into these new spaces and places that weren't built for me. I was working on Wall Street, working really, really hard. And there was some part of me that was like ashamed of my background and where I came from. And I came from a low income family. And sort of full circle as an adult, I realized that's nonsense and silly, right? And be very proud of who you are, bring your full self to the table, regardless of your background and your family dynamics. Everybody, trust me, I've been in very wealthy rooms, you know, at the top of the food chain. Everybody has their issues. So I would say, as you're climbing the ladder and you're entering these new spaces, don't forget yourself. And don't necessarily try to change yourself. Obviously follow the rules and show up and be a good steward. But carry yourself and carry your legacy and your family, the richness of your family with you as you go.
Yes, I completely agree. Thank you, Ms. Cash. It was an honor to speak with you. I'm going to throw it back to Ms. Alexis to close us out.
Thank you, Calvin. Oh my gosh, let's give Miss Cash a round of applause. If you have your reactions, if you're on camera, let's give it up for Miss Cash. She dropped all of the gems today. Thank you so much. I truly enjoy that. You know, sometimes I think, you know, we put on these events for our students, but I know as a staff member, I'm like, whoo, this was for me. So thank you so much. I really appreciate all of your wisdom and all of the as the kids say, all of the jewels you dropped and gems you dropped. So thank you so much today. We really appreciate all of that. It was something that you just mentioned, and I think this is something that I share with all of the interns. Make sure you always bring yourself. No matter what room you walk into, bring yourself. That is what is going to carry you. So absolutely. Thank you so much, Ms. Cash. We really appreciate it. So everyone, thank you all for joining us again for our second Leaders Like Me event and our conversation. It was amazing. I was watching the chat and the questions were off the chain. Literally, I was like, I wish we had more time so we could ask them all. You all were giving some great information and some great knowledge. So I am excited to have been a part of this experience and a part of this conversation. So again, Calvin, thank you for asking amazing questions. And Kesha, thank you for giving such amazing responses and advice for our interns, as well as some of the adults out here, because as we all know, we're all still trying to figure it out every day that we get, right? So thank you so much for your inspiring conversation today.